and you give me 5 cents, I cannot clean it. And this has been the pattern with respect to a lot of these initiatives. The funds that they put on the table is not enough to do anything. And yet, but if we say that, okay, we know we have this table, but we want to clean this section first, it will cost so much. The chances are that we might get there.
Thank you. I think, Jules, you want to come in, then we'll come to you.
Yeah, I want to point out the challenge of getting commitments to really be lived up to. The point that you made, Eddie. Multiple commitments over and over again on the Millennium Development Goals, and the developed countries falling short on delivering. But the reality is that part of the problem is what Lauren pointed out, namely that the developed world has an understandable concern about the effectiveness of some of their investments. And there where transaction cost, even corruption, has in the past made developed countries hesitant about putting the money on the table. We now have to find a mechanism to get this money on the table in such a way that developed countries have confidence it is going to result in the adaptation and it is going to result in the mitigation. And in order to do that, I come back to the concept of these low carbon development plans. Because then there is something on the table from a country like Ghana or Bangladesh or the Philippines that says, this is our plan. This is what we're going to do. We have looked at the situation in our country and we need dikes and we need seeds and we want to work on our forestry and we can contribute a little bit with renewable energy. And therefore, this is the technology we need and this is the money that we need. And here is our plan. And we own this plan. This is our plan. We're committed to this plan. But in return, developed world, the conditionality goes the other way around this time. In return, you're going to have to provide us with money. And you can hold us to account for delivering this plan, because it's our plan, but you're going to have to hold us account to a plan that you have to pay for. And I think that concept of taking ownership of your development with a mechanism that is fundable, but that is measurable, reportable, and verifiable, I think could be a mechanism to break through the deadlock also of getting a little bit of money on the table early on.
Because it's arguably more palatable to treasuries in the developed world. Yeah, okay, thank you. We've been waiting very patiently, sir.
I'm Anthony Hill, and I'll use the descriptive to say that I've been in the multilateral system for over 40 years. And what I've heard this morning is quite discouraging. What the multilateral system has managed to do for Copenhagen is to mobilize a consensus on science that if there is not a stabilization of emissions and the stock of greenhouse gases is not held above a certain level, then we are potentially in a catastrophic situation in which North and South disappears. We are in a global situation. And we are using the old concepts. We talk about donor accountability or making it palatable to donors to give money. Incremental money will not solve the problem. What I think our colleague, the first speaker, said is really the revolution that is happening in certain countries. In the United States, there is the incipient revolution of Mr. Obama's green economy, which is to re-engineer the economy to sever the connection between growth and carbon. We cannot sever population from growth. We all need growth. The Chinese are doing it in their green jobs. We are, in fact, going to Copenhagen with national climate change adaptation plans as a consequence of the convention. But at the same time, I have heard in the various rooms in which I have been participating or listening, a sense of déjà vu. We will go there and we will have perhaps a little fix and we will go on talking, etc. And that may be the best we can do in the circumstance. I prefer the approach which says, here we are, and this is what the science tells us. What I've heard from Senator Lagarde in another occasion is different from what I hear today. That is, we must link disaster reduction, which is adaptation, with climate change action, which is also adaptation and mitigation. What I've heard from Mr. Hack is that we went that route in an innovative way with adaptation and mitigation. But I've also heard that adaptation is now going to be a subsidiary body in Copenhagen. I hear so many contradictory things that I'm in no doubt that what the consensus is that we are headed towards a less than even halfway decent outcome, because the people who are negotiating in Copenhagen do not work on the paradigm of interdependence in a genuine way. And in this same room, Professor Barber set it out very clearly. Everybody is doing his national thing. And when you talk about our leaders and the climate change negotiators, we're talking about essentially bureaucrats who are middle-level people. And then they will push it up to the leaders and
Thank
the
you.
leaders do that.
Thank you very, very much. What we'll do, I think, is take a couple more comments and then respond. Can we pass the mic to the chap here, please? Thank you. And then we'll give everyone a chance to respond.
Thank you very much. My name is Mohammed Ahmed Zubair. I work with the Islamic Development Bank in Jeddah. I was part of the process of G20. My organization, IDB, was along with the other MDBs. And in the G20 summit in
I've got to
London,
ask you what those acronyms mean.
Islamic Development Bank.
Okay.
So as part of the G20 process in the summit, which was held in London on 2nd April, there was a mandate, expanded mandate given to all the MDBs, World Bank, Inter-American, Asian, African Development Bank, and Islamic Development Bank. And the expanded mandate implied was, MDBs to deal with, help developing countries deal with the economic recovery, put in social safety nets, and climate change. And additional $100 billion have been made available, committed by the MDBs over the next 3 years. These are on top of their normal lending. So I think as far as the funding is concerned, the developed countries in the G20 group have already supported MDBs through various capital adequacy measures. And there are plans, firm plans. There's no national treasury involved. These are MDBs, and they have committed $100 billion. So I thought I'd bring this information on the table. Thank you.
Can I ask you to hand the mic 2 rows back to the lady? You, madam. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. I fully support...
Could you just say who you are and where you're from?
Yeah, my name is Malini Mehra. I'm a climate campaigner from India. I fully support the reframing that people like Anthony have suggested for this, because I think if we continue to have the same kind of discussion using the hackneyed terms of North and South, developed and developing, and continue to have the same demands on finance and technology the way that they've been framed for the last 30 years, we're on the trip to nowhere. And frankly, the next 6 months that we have to do a lot of soul searching about actually the problem that the crisis that we're trying to solve, and start coming up with some new framing on this. And start also addressing some very, very unpalatable home truths. And those are, in this discussion so far, there's been no discussion of the public interest and the public good. We seem to assume when we talk about these resource transfers, which some people refer to as, well, it's compensation, other people, my government talks it as entitlements, that actually these are not private funds held by the government. You know, it's not as if it's Gordon Brown's money or anyone else's money. This is public money, and there is a responsibility to be accountable on the part of recipients to taxpayers. And there's no discussion here about actually the level of trust which is required to make sure if you are expecting funds from the Swedish taxpayer, the Dutch taxpayer, the Swiss taxpayer, that they will expect some accountability. I'd like to see a little bit of that enter the discussion. The second is from our own perspective in countries like India. We're a middle-income country, okay? We are a development exporter. We're a technology exporter. We have more billionaires than India than Japan does. However, we have very, very inadequate means of domestic resource mobilization. Part of the fact for that is that because we don't trust our government. That's why people don't part with their money. And if you actually want to put money in people's pockets, which is what happens every time there is a major disaster, whether it's Pakistan, whether it's Gujarat, whether it's Orissa floods, what happens? People get the pocket in the money. How? Through remittances. Remittances are the only way, and that flow is much larger than overseas development assistance.